Chapter 18, Data Types and Conversions. Solution Movie 18.1. So in this exercise, you're going to apply what you've learned about type conversions. Our first step says create a playground named conversions.playground. Go to Xcode, File, New, Playground, and we'll call it conversions. Okay, our next step, create a variable named i16 of type int16 and initialize it to 1. So our variable is i16, it's of type int16, and we set it to 1. Step 3, create a variable named i32 of type int32 and initialize it to 2. Var i32 of type int32, and we set it to 2. Step 4, add the values in the i16 and i32 variables. I say i16 plus, so I say i16 plus i32, and notice I get a compiler error. If I click here, it says I can't add arguments of these types. So to get around this, I can convert one type to the other type. So I can say int32, pass that to a constructor, int32, it will convert the two values, and it produces 3. So the moral of this story is, do as Apple suggests, unless you have a real reason for needing an int16 specifically or an int32, you just declare your variables to be all of type int, then you can always add them together. So now I can get rid of this conversion simply by virtue of the fact that I've used int to declare both variables. Okay, for our next step, step 5, create a variable named control. Specify its type as a class that will allow you to store an instance of UI button, UI text field, or UI slider. And we're given the hint to check Apple's documentation to figure out which type to use. So I'm going to Safari. I'm going to create a new window. And first I'm going to look up UI button. When you enter a class name like UI button, typically the first item you see in Google results is the UI button class reference, which is exactly what we want. So basically, I am looking for a parent class that UI button, UI text field, and UI slider share, and I'll use that as the variable's type. So here I can see UI button is a subclass of UI control. I can say UI text field, and UI text field is a subclass of UI control. I can say UI slider, and UI slider is also a subclass of UI control. So this means I can come back over here, I'll create a variable called control of type UI control. Now our next step says store an instance of UI text field in the control variable. So I can say UI text field, and we see that that succeeded. And this works because UI text field is a subclass of UI control. And with that same thought in mind, I can also type UI button, and that would work fine because it's a subclass of UI control. Or I could put UI slider, and that works because it's also a subclass of UI control. But let's go ahead and put UI text field back, and we'll go to our next step. Create a variable named text field of type UI text field. So a variable named text field, it is of type UI text field. And step 8 says, convert the object stored in the control variable to UI text field and store it in the text field variable. So I'm going to take the value in control, so I'll say my assignment operator, I'll say control, and I can use the as operator to convert it to a text field. and we see that this works. And remember, we should only ever use the as operator if we are absolutely positively sure that the value contained in the variable is exactly what we're specifying here. So we performed our conversion and everything's working great.